Hello.
Our story begins inside of Padmé's residence on Coruscant. Anakin and Padmé are sitting on the balcony talking with each other. They're talking about truthfully being in love with each other. It had been so many months since they last saw each other in person. It was so nice to finally be able to catch up and see each other with their own eyes again. Though their interaction was nice, it was still giving the two of them first date vibes. There was a slight awkwardness in the air, not in the bad sense, but in a cute sense. They had so much to catch up on. The hope was that the war would come to an end before Anakin had to be shipped off to the battlefront. There was a genuine chance of that happening. The two of them eventually moved back in from the balcony and caught a small movie together on the couch, bundled up with each other before heading to bed. It really is all about the little things in these kind of relationships. Once they were asleep, everything seemed fine. Though, on the other side of the city, Palpatine began to twist a dark spell into the Force. He was attempting to give his future pupil visions of his wife dying in childbirth. In reality, these visions could become reality if Anakin went down the dark path. However, as the Force works in mysterious ways, it went to work. It saw Palpatine's devious alchemy and reversed it against him. The Force only wishes for the light, hence the creation of the Chosen One. With the possibility of Skywalker becoming Vader, the Force had the twins prepared, the only beings who could possibly stand up against Vader if he went down the path. It was more or less a security for the Force. It didn't want to have to be reliant on rebuilding a new Force to try and stand against Vader and Sidious. So with Sidious playing inside of Anakin's mind, the Force got to work. It showed him who he could really become. It would show him the reality of becoming Darth Vader and what it would take away from him. The Force knew, as many others around the galaxy did know, that Anakin Skywalker was a good man. Sometimes a bit arrogant, maybe sometimes a bit careless, but at heart, he was good. Something that had been taught to him since he was a slave on Tatooine. Lessons that Shmi gave to him never left him. So the Force put him into excruciating pain. He woke up. He recognized the halls. He stumbled out of a hallway for whatever reason. Anakin was compelled to look back. As he did, he saw a number of younglings ripped apart by a lightsaber. He was very confused. His eyes traced the damage down to the sound of the lightsaber he was holding. The sound of distant blaster fire broke his attention. He heard Obi-Wan yell that Anakin was his brother, and when he turned around, Anakin threw his blade up to defend himself. Obi-Wan smacked down, and before he made contact, he was shot dead on sight. He turned over to see Captain, now Commander Rex, standing with his pistol held out straight, smoke filtering out of it. His jaw dropped, and then Rex came up to him and informed him that they had captured the remaining Jedi and were waiting for his and his master's approval. Anakin didn't want to go, but he was forced to because he couldn't lucid dream. They walked and walked for what felt like hours. The entire time they were walking, his footsteps got heavier and heavier. His breathing became more and more difficult, like his lungs were closing up on him. When he finally rounded the corner, he looked down. He couldn't see through his peripherals. All he could see is a cover over his eyes. He felt heavy. The breathing wasn't his, and it hurt every time he did breathe. Anakin looked down at his robes covered in darkness and his body covered in armor. Next to him, Rex asked what they should do, and Anakin looked over and saw a number of council members on the ground, none of them looking up. Each of them was missing an arm, a leg, a hand, whatnot. They all sat there defeated. Amongst them were the bodies of the dead younglings. Anakin looked and asked what happened, and none of them responded. From next to him, a voice told Anakin that he was fulfilling his destiny. He told him to kill the Jedi and become who he was meant to become. Given to his anger, Vader covered his eyes and cried out. Then there was silence. When he opened them, he was standing in a field. It was silent. Too silent. He looked around. Mist covered the ground and small lights covered what seemed to be weeping willows. It felt like Naboo, but why was it so sad? He turned his head to see members of Padmé's family mourning, and then he saw a casket. His curiosity got the best of him, and he started walking towards them. Skywalker couldn't seem to escape this suit of armor. When he finally got to them, they disregarded him, telling him that they couldn't believe what he had done, who he had become. They were completely outraged by who he was. He asked and pleaded, and they disappeared. He looked in front of him and just saw the tomb of Padmé Amidala. This jolted him from his sleep. The move was so forceful that it woke Padmé up immediately. She looked over, and he was drenched in sweat. His chest was heaving, and his eyes were wider than they had any right to be. She grabbed his arm, and he didn't squeeze. If he did, he'd break her hand into pieces. It was his metallic arm after all. He calmed down and realized that he was in the real world again. It all felt so real. He looked around and made sure that it wasn't real. Padmé told him that he was alright, and asked what he had a nightmare about. He didn't know if he could even say it. He didn't know if he wanted to. The only thing Anakin could compare those dreams to were about the ones he had of his mother. But he didn't want to do that. To kill all those people? Why would Rex be in on it with him? Why would Rex support him? Who was the hooded man? Anakin knew that the dreams about his mother came true true, so could he really become responsible for all that hate and destruction? He turned to Padmé, afraid to say the words, but she asked nicely that he share, suggesting that she couldn't help him if he didn't tell her what was happening. He asked her if she remembered the dreams he had about his mother. She nodded her head, and he explained that the dreams he had were similar to that, but at the Jedi. She asked what he meant, and Anakin scratched the words out of his mouth, telling her that they died because of him. He became someone he didn't recognize, and truthfully, he was afraid. She sat up immediately and rubbed his hand, telling him that it wouldn't happen. He was a good man. He wouldn't do that. He released a pent-up breath and nodded his head. The reassurance did help. The hug that followed also helped him. Anakin was able to go to sleep peacefully next to Padmé for the rest of the night, but when the morning came, he would go directly to Grand Master Yoda and request time to speak with him. Yoda took young Skywalker in first. He made sure that his time moved around what Skywalker needed in this moment. Anakin sat down in a darkened room in the early morning of Coruscant. He spoke up and told the Grand Master that he was having nightmares and visions. Yoda asked what these visions were about, and Anakin suggested that he was seeing death. Yoda asked about who, if it was someone he knew, or himself. Anakin stuttered. He stopped. He looked blankly forward and told the Grand Master that he was afraid. Yoda tilted his head ever so slightly, and Anakin finished his statement by saying that he was the one responsible for the death, but it wasn't him. He asked if that made sense, and the Grand Master nodded his head. He told Anakin to remember to be careful while sensing the future. The Force was always in motion. If he killed someone in a village during the dream, then he could not do it in the present. But Yoda reminded Anakin that trying to stop his fate could only in reality try and force it into happening. Anakin expressed his desire to not be responsible for such death. Yoda could sense the actual fear coming from Anakin. It must have really rattled him. The Grand Master didn't want to blow Anakin off, and he wanted to help him through this. There weren't the words that he could say that really convey what Yoda wanted to say. The lesson originally he would have had to say to Anakin would have been rejoicing in the passing of those around us, which at its heart is a powerful message. But the fear that Anakin was conveying was consuming him. Yoda asked Anakin what this vision of him looked like, and he said he wasn't sure. All he knew was that it was a metallic suit, and he couldn't breathe. Yoda thought about his journey with Qui-Gon the Dagobah months prior. Yoda stopped and then told Anakin that initially, he was going to be put on a mission, but instead, he told Anakin that his astromech had the proper coordinates for where he needed to go. Yoda told Anakin that he'd be excused for as much time as he needed. He asked why he was being sent to Dagobah. Yoda told Anakin that he'd be able to go to a cave on the planet and deeply connect with the Force. He might even be able to help him have a more in-depth vision that could assist him through this. Yoda informed Skywalker that he would stay on Coruscant until Anakin's return. Anakin was very thankful for this assistance and immediately departed for the planet of Dagobah. When Yoda entered the council chambers, he informed them of the change in their plans and what he would be doing for the time being. He expressed his interest to remain on Coruscant until Skywalker returned. The council took in what he said and accepted it. There didn't seem to be an issue with anything he said, and they went along with what Yoda suggested. This would have Mace Windu being sent out to Kashyyyk and Obi-Wan Kenobi sent to Utapau the following day. On the other hand, Anakin stopped by Padmé's residence to inform her that he'd be going off-world for a day or two to complete a mission that Yoda sent him on. He explained that it was a reaction from Yoda about the dreams he had. The Grand Master believed it would be for his betterment. Padmé was happy that the Jedi were trying to help him through this, and Anakin agreed. He gave his love and then departed for the planet of Dagobah. When he eventually arrived, R2 slowly lowered his ship down to where he took Yoda a few months prior. Anakin got out of the ship and stood in the swamps of the planet. He was really confused. He didn't really understand where he should go. Yoda didn't give clear instructions, so instead of getting flustered, he used the Force to lead him there. Once he closed his eyes, he knew where to go. Though he realized how truly dark the planet of Dagobah was, it was shrouded in the dark side of the Force. He could feel it seeping into his skin, but he carried on forward until he found a shrouded brush. This is odd. Is this where the Grand Master wanted him to go? Anakin entered the brush. He crept past an assortment of reptiles and scaly creatures. His boots sank into the moist mud, and he could hear a tingling echo, though he could not tell if it was through the Force or if it was something else. Because of how strong the Force was on Dagobah, Anakin heard the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn. Anakin whipped his head back and looked for Qui-Gon, but could not see him. The voice called his name again, and when Anakin turned around, he stumbled back. He was looking at an apparition, similar to the one he encountered on the planet of Mortis about a year or so beforehand. It was Qui-Gon. He asked Anakin a question he had long forgotten about. Most of the time on Mortis was wiped from Anakin's mind, but he remembered his experience with Qui-Gon Jinn, and he even talked to Yoda about it months prior. Qui-Gon asked Anakin if he still believed he was the Chosen One, and Anakin shrugged. He was unsure. How could he know? Qui-Gon suggested that he believed Anakin would defeat his demons and bring balance to the Force. Anakin asked how that could be possible, how he could accomplish that. but Qui-Gon simply turned his head and gestured forward. Force ghosts could not reveal the future or the past. They could not directly tell anyone about anything in the future. For one being that the future is always in motion, and two being that they simply weren't allowed to. It's why the Force helped Yoda have visions of Palpatine's lair, but Yoda never went any further than the vision. The Force was always in motion. It was just left up to the individuals to make their decisions based off of what was laid out in front of them. Anakin walked a little further into the cave and closed up. He couldn't see much until he saw the echoes of the nightmare he had the night before. Though this time, there was so much more. He could see encounters with a grown-up Ahsoka, and a fight with the two older versions of Obi-Wan. One where he donned gray Jedi robes and longer hair with patches of gray, and another where he was all white on the face and the hair. Anakin couldn't watch anymore, but he did. He saw a castle surrounded by lava and his descent further into darkness, and, at that, madness. He was inconsolable, and he didn't know how to process anything he had just seen. It didn't stop there, though. He got to watch his wife die, though there was no context that her death came from childbirth, just more so that she died. Anakin stumbled to the ground, begging that this not become his reality. He couldn't live a life full of so much pain and suffering. Anakin looked up and saw himself, but there was something off. His eyes were different colors, and he was walking like he wasn't even human anymore. Anakin rose to his feet to defend himself from a crimson lightsaber. Their fight wasn't long-lived, but once the vision ended, Anakin had a bit more of an understanding, but this did leave him with more questions than he had before he arrived. He understood that what had happened to him he could only blame on himself. However, he did not understand why this happened to him or why he would do it. He sat on a log next to R2 for a little while, maybe an hour at most. Part of Anakin was hoping that Qui-Gon would come and talk to him again, but he never came. Skywalker thought on everything he saw and prepared for his return to the Jedi Temple. When he eventually returned to the temple, Obi-Wan had already been dispatched to Utapau to track down and destroy General Grievous. On the other hand, Mace Windu was sent to Kashyyyk to assist Master Luminara and the Wookiees against the droid forces. As Anakin returned, he was greeted by Master Yoda, who ensured that he stayed behind for Anakin's betterment. Yoda likely wouldn't have done so if Anakin didn't seem so distraught by the visions he had the night before. The two of them walked into a secluded meditation chamber inside the Jedi Temple. This was severely different than the one they used before. The chamber was a chamber of light, if you will. It was flooded with the powers of the light side, and because of such powers in the light, individuals could use it to display what they wouldn't be able to otherwise. Yoda asked Anakin what he saw. He was curious. Yoda saw a lot when he was on Dagobah, such as the ending of the Clone Wars, and he allowed Anakin to speak on everything. It took a minute, but once Anakin started, he continued. He talked about the end of the Clone Wars resulting in the deaths of thousands of Jedi, the rise of darkness, his fights with Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, the loss of those close to him. This left an array of questions that needed answers, but Yoda started and tried his best. Throughout the Clone Wars, he had done his best to be a good guide for Skywalker, but sometimes the message that he was trying to get across didn't get picked up as fast as usual, or even at all. Anakin didn't quite understand all the lessons that Yoda was trying to help him with, so here, he tried again. The main difference in this encounter is Anakin was really paying attention. He tried his best to have an open mind, because his visions left him with so much fear before that he didn't want them to become reality. If he turned to the dark side, he would destroy everything he loved, and so he feared doing that more than anything. Yoda sent him to Dagobah for answers. He only got one, so now he needed to get more of those answers from Yoda. Their conversation would move from minutes into hours. They actually spent the majority of the day talking with each other, because not for nothing, Yoda now had another individual who could relate to him. No one else a part of the council had seen what Anakin had seen, so the discussion went from therapeutic to, "Whoa, did you actually see that?" It was really nice of a change of conversation for the two of them, and by the end of the conversation, they'd actually established a layer of trust with each other. Because they spent all day with each other, talking about the Force and the ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn, and other things Yoda discovered while on his journey, along with the little fragments Anakin remembered from Mortis, Skywalker completely forgot about Palpatine and had no time to visit him. This left him to return to Padmé's home to talk with her about his day. Once he opened up, he was ready to have a conversation. His mind was spinning with all the information he and Yoda shared with each other. It was like there was a galaxy-wide secret and only the two of them knew about it, which for Anakin made the bonding time so much more imperative for him to have with Yoda. For Padmé, she couldn't help, but she could just be happy that Anakin was happy. That's all she ever wanted. Everything seemed fine, and that was partially true until Anakin went to sleep, and the nightmares returned. But this time they were much more grim. His slaughter of the innocents were turned up to 1,000,000. He didn't just kill them, he released floods on them because feeling their helplessness while drowning made him feel powerful, or releasing a volcano on people so he could feel their fears that became trapped and were left to ponder over their final thoughts of life while staring death in the face. This nightmare only continued to get worse for Anakin, and it finally got him to see the hooded man strike down. Not just Padmé, but 2 children as well, which really confused him initially, but he realized that they were his children. Anakin didn't even consider that they were twins, he just saw that they were his. As he went to kill the hooded man, he woke up to Padmé screaming. Anakin was so hostile in the dream that he lifted every object in the room off of the ground. He also lifted R2 and Padmé off of the floor and bed, which woke Padmé up. Anakin was able to regather his composure and slowly lower them to the ground so that they could be safe, before realizing what had happened. He asked if Padmé was alright, and she nodded her head before asking what had happened to him. He told her that he didn't know. He said he was having a nightmare and he reacted in the dream. He didn't realize he was doing anything in the real world. Padmé actually understood. He had powers that she could never understand or have, so she didn't blame him. She had nightmares all the time, and she reacted physically to them before, so she could only imagine what it was like for him with all of his powers. Similarly to the first time he had nightmares, they talked for a moment before going back to sleep. In the morning, Anakin returned to Yoda and expressed what had happened, and how he was reacting in his sleep. Anakin said that he was worried about his aggressive usage of powers of the Force in his sleep, and how they could become dangerous. Yoda agreed and suggested that tonight they place him inside of a bacta tank. That way Yoda could watch over his sleeping and make sure that nothing bad happened to him. It would be very similar to Yoda's bacta tank experience a few months prior. The Dark Lord and the Sith, on the other hand, was getting impatient. He hadn't seen Skywalker in a couple of days and could feel his grip slipping, so he did what he had to do. He would wait until the information revealing Kenobi's death came back before executing Order 66. It'd be the most effective way to deal damage to the Order and hopefully turn Skywalker to the dark side. Sidious at this point was running with 3 or 4 different theories on how he could become Emperor, and he wasn't exactly afraid of which one of them he would use. He could do whatever he felt was necessary. Though Sidious would be very disappointed when, in a number of hours, Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker showed up to his office to inform him that General Grievous had been destroyed. Yoda sent Anakin instead of Anakin because, under the assumption that Palpatine could be the Sith Lord, he didn't want that mind messing with Anakin while he was in such a vulnerable position. It was beginning to get dark out, so Yoda and Skywalker headed back to the bacta tank room they had lined up for Anakin. They had everything ready to go so they could monitor his mind while he was sleeping. While they were in there, Yoda felt the dark side, but he couldn't tell what it was. He looked over to Saesee Tiin, Coleman Kaj, Kit Fisto, and Shaak Ti, who were also in the room, and asked if they heard back from Master Kolar, and they all shook their heads. Since it was relatively light out at this point, Sindrala called over the loudspeakers of the temple and put the entire facility into a lockdown. The Jedi Temple was under attack, or at least that's what it seemed like. Skywalker was already sedated, so Yoda requested that Coleman and Shaak Ti stay here with Skywalker. The other 2 would follow him. Kit Fisto and Saesee Tiin followed Yoda out of the medical facility to see a Jedi Temple guard with his lightsabers ignited attacking his peers. Fisto broke off from the main group to deal with its insubordination. The other 2 got to the front of the temple and found the clone army was marching on them. Though thanks to Sindralik and a couple of his guards noticing this, they were able to thwart the attack. It was lucky too. The future Grand Inquisitor was just taken off patrol, and so if he was on patrol, then the temple would have likely had no time to defend itself. The dark side that Yoda felt wasn't just on Coruscant for the surprise of Anakin Kolar's death. Rather, it was the death of Jedi across the entire galaxy. Because everything happened earlier, Ahsoka and Bo-Katan were able to fight their way out of a situation on Mandalore, though this left them all killed by the clone troopers. Obi-Wan, on the other hand, was shot dead because he was surrounded by his own men and the droid army. It was really a tough situation, very similar to that of Ki-Adi-Mundi. He was in between enemy lines, and he was simply killed by the crossfire. Plo Koon was entering a starfighter when Commander Wolffe attacked him. He was lucky enough to get out of the hangar bay, but without a hyperspace ring to get himself away from Cato Neimoidia, he basically had to find a hiding spot and an alternative means of getting off the planet. Everything was completely changed, and because Palpatine wanted to ensure Anakin's fall to the dark side, he had Padmé taken to the works by Commander Fox and a couple other men. With Order 66 in full effect, the Jedi had to defend themselves. If they couldn't, then they would lose everything. But with Yoda and Sindralik completely prepared and the future Grand Inquisitor killed by Kit Fisto, the Jedi Temple was like a fortress. No one could get in, and only the Jedi knew how to get out. They had vessels prepared under the temple in case there was a need for an evacuation, which is exactly what Yoda did, just to be positive. The evacuation procedure allowed Jaka Sanu to evacuate all the information to the awaiting vessels below the Jedi Temple. The vessels were placed there after the Jedi retook the temple after the Order fell in the Old Republic. The knowledge of it was passed down through every council. Every year that new council members were added to the council, the information was relayed. Sindralik also knew about it, but if he had been killed, no one would have been able to do anything about it. The council believed it'd be best to keep such information hidden. Yoda didn't know how widespread this was, and so he did his best to ensure everyone got out of the temple safely, just in case the Republic tried to bombard it. The evacuation began, and for hours, while the clone army tried to barge down the temple gates, the Jedi readied up and prepared to leave. Though during this process, Yoda had the temple surveillance monitor the Republic Executive Building to see if Palpatine went anywhere, which he didn't. Yoda initially planned on bringing Coleman, Stacey, Kit, and Shaak Ti. However, he remembered his vision from all those months ago. He remembered that in the vision it was him and Anakin versus the Dark Lord, and Yoda had to do one thing. He had to make a galaxy-saving decision. Would he choose 4 much more trustworthy Jedi who were trained for this moment, council members for a reason? Or would he choose the incredibly untrustworthy Anakin Skywalker who was created by the Force to restore the balance, and who Yoda had only established a true bond with a couple days before? Yoda couldn't believe what he was doing. He wouldn't do it, but the Order was going to survive. If he died, it would live on. He made sure of that, so instead of bringing the other 4 council members, he had Anakin come with him. The 2 of them would leave after the rest of the Jedi evacuated the planet and left for an ancient homeworld of the Jedi. At the same time, Yoda and Anakin made their way across the city. The clones at the same time entered the Jedi Temple and found it completely emptied out. They didn't understand what was happening. Inside the works, the Jedi shuttle landed. Yoda had a talk with Anakin on the way over, and he said that the reality is, he knew Sidious would challenge them both. The Dark Lord forced them to be at their best, so they needed to trust each other 100%. Anakin looked over with a grin and told the Grand Master that he had his back. Skywalker hadn't learned of Padmé's disappearance yet, so he'd be very shocked when he entered and found a couple of Coruscant guardsmen standing over the senator with their blasters facing towards her head. Yoda was the first one to enter the room, and he saw before Anakin did, and before Skywalker could react with anger or rage, Yoda used the Force to lift the clones into the ceiling as fast as he could. He knew in the moment he needed to trust Skywalker 120%. The moment Yoda moved the clones, Sidious shot lightning at the Grand Master. A lightsaber ignited, and Anakin stood in front of the Jedi Master. He blocked the lightning until Sidious stopped, and Skywalker looked down and Yoda looked up. They had each other. One moment, one shot. One chance to end everything they had fought for so long to eradicate. Yoda and Sidious ignited their weapons and prepared for the battle of the ages. The Jedi stood together. Anakin could see his wife was alright. By this point, Yoda basically figured it out. Didn't need to make a big deal out of it. The 2 Jedi moved in first. Yoda understood that the key to all this was keeping Padmé safe. It wasn't the Jedi way, but as he understood, he needed to keep Skywalker with him. Their blades clashed with Sidious. For Yoda, it was almost like deja vu, but instead of him having to tell Skywalker not to kill Dooku, they could collectively focus on the Sith Lord. Anakin was almost out of his element. The speed at which the 2 avatars of the Force moved was remarkable. He could hardly keep up. It was like a blur. They moved so fast, but he was the chosen one. He would be prepared for every strike that came his way, and he was. Every time the blade was attacked, he swiftly defended himself. He struck with precision, and every moment he shined like the chosen one should. Yoda was impressed with how far Anakin had come in such a short life. To be able to understand and stand toe-to-toe with an individual with so much darkness and so much skill was remarkable to say the least. Green, red, and blue lit the chambers up in an exciting ray of fire and fury. The 2 of them pushed Sidious out of the lair into a small catwalk. Yoda had to be careful here. In the vision, this is where Skywalker was knocked unconscious. The events of the vision would come to fruition as Skywalker was kicked in the head and sent almost over the railing before being electrocuted by Sidious. Yoda moved in to defend the young Jedi and blocked everything he could. Yoda assumed Anakin was knocked out, but he wasn't. The Grand Master and the Dark Lord of the Sith continued their fight until Sidious separated the platforms in an effort to force Anakin to plummet to his death. But in a move of quick action, Yoda lifted Skywalker with the Force and placed him on a safe platform. Yoda understood that he wasn't the future, he was the past. Anakin was the future, and he had to survive. As he saved Skywalker, he was electrocuted, until Sidious lunged at Yoda. The 2 of them began to fall. Their blades interlocked on the way down, until Yoda was stopped in midair, before he could fall. Sidious lashed onto Yoda's leg. When Yoda looked up, it was Skywalker holding on to him with the Force. His face was creased. The strain of holding up Yoda and Sidious was eating away at him. Yoda told Anakin to let him go. Anakin shook his head. He pleaded, but Yoda shook his head silently, and Anakin understood. He flipped his lightsaber over the ledge and released Yoda from his grip. The Jedi Grand Master grabbed Anakin's lightsaber and drove it through Palpatine. His final moments of descent would be falling to the ground, accepting that the Sith had been destroyed, and the future of the Jedi had been secured. Anakin, when he looked down, couldn't see Yoda or Sidious, but he knew they were gone. Part of him hurt. The previous 2 days had been a nice bond with the Grand Master, but at least the Sith were gone. He got up and ran to the interior of the lair to find Padmé. The clones were on the ground, all of them knocked out, and Anakin got Padmé to the vessel he arrived in, before getting her back to her residence in a less recognizable ship. The corresponding days would be a bit tantalizing. While Ahsoka had survived, a lot of Jedi hadn't. The main bulk of the Order was able to relocate off-world for the time being, which is where all the survivors were going. Notable Jedi like Mace Windu, Plo Koon, Caleb Dume, and Quinlan Vos were able to get there and hide out for the time being. Anakin kept in contact with the Jedi, informing them of everything that went down inside the Senate and here on Coruscant and how it was being handled. He was also able to inform them of Yoda's sacrifice during the encounter with the Sith Lord. However, Anakin was having a really hard time dealing with the loss of Obi-Wan and the birth of his children at the same time. Both kind of happened in the same period of time, and he couldn't really handle it. Days later, Yoda would show up on the new homeworld of the Jedi. He knew he could survive that fall. He just needed to show Anakin how he could let go. Plus, he could kill Sidious, instead of letting him escape. It was a win-win. The Galactic Senate would be informed via the formerly captured Senator that Palpatine was secretly the big bad. While the Separatist Council would remain hidden for several more months, the war would continue. It would last until the Separatist leaders were found. However, when the war came to an end, almost a full year later, the Jedi had no involvement in the war. Anakin and Padme settled down a little bit, as Anakin expressed his desire to remove himself from the Order after helping eradicate the Sith. Luke and Leia would have the luxury of being raised by both parents. With the restructuring of the Republic being completed at some point, Padme would vacate Coruscant for her family's home on Naboo, before they picked up and moved to Chandrilia for a change of environment that was much closer to the core. The Jedi would memorialize the ones they lost, and return to assisting people, though they would never let anyone know where their order was located anymore. They would come and go by themselves without telling or showing. On another note, Yoda, after completing a lifetime of work with the death of Sidious, would step down from the role of Grand Master, passing the torch on to Plo Koon. He would also leave the High Council and become more so an advisor, spending the rest of his days helping anyone who needed it inside of his order. The execution of Order 66 made the clones more hostile, which forced the clones to remove their inhibitor chips and launch an investigation into the Kaminoans, which resulted in the Senate removing Order 66 from its place in the Republic. They would also attempt to apologize to the Jedi, but could never find them. The Jedi completely separated themselves from any sort of politics. The twins, on the other hand, got the life they should have always had. With both their parents present, they would pursue lives in different sects of public service, to be like their parents, servants for a pain but rebuilding galaxy. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our story. Again, special thanks to Galvin Gaming, Tristan, Darth Revan, Pimp Daddy Bane, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Mad Matty Studios, Anakin003, Lemon Knight, Rex the Wolf, the man with 3 first names, Dark Saint 46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing for supporting the channel. Smash the like button. If you want to support me in other ways, go check out the Patreon. Otherwise, let's talk about our story real quicker. Rooney. This was a fun little story to do. We've done visions, and we did visions of Order 66. We did Padme having dreams of Anakin becoming Vader. And so with this one, being that we've done 2 of them similar in aspects, I wanted to do something that felt different. Obviously, I don't want to copy what I've done before. And so with this one, I really want to put an emphasis on the parallels between Yoda's journey to basically the netherworlds of the Force, Dagobah, and Moraband during the Clone Wars, and how that kind of relates to Anakin. I wanted them to have like a special bonding moment there, because I know everyone says Anakin forgets everything that happened at Mortis, but he didn't. It was in the Clone Wars Season 6 when he was talking to Yoda. Yoda was like, "Oh, you had visions of Qui-Gon on Mortis, didn't you?" And he's like, "Yes, I did. Why are you asking?" It was a whole conversation, and that arc of Yoda's in the Clone Wars is one of my favorite arcs, because it explores what the reality of the Force is in Star Wars, and how bringing balance to the Force isn't destroying the Sith, it's just keeping the darkness in check, with the light having more presence in the Force. And being that that's what the Clone Wars establishes, I wanted to play off of that. I also wanted Anakin and Yoda to have like a connection there, because it's played for a lot in the Clone Wars, but it doesn't really go any further than that, especially in Revenge of the Sith. So I wanted that little bond to kind of transpire there instead, because you have all that set up for their bond in Clone Wars, and then it just kind of just doesn't exist in Revenge of the Sith. I wanted Anakin and Yoda to have that like nice little bond, and allow Anakin's visions of him becoming Vader become like the precipice for him to actually become the chosen one. Anyways, I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.